Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skos-Caspo.
Quack. Quack.
Quack, quack, quack.
Quack.
Don't feed the ducks, boys.
Tonight we're here to talk about one of the newest members of the Big Ten. And I guess they would be like the official newest members of the Big Ten, right? They in Washington, while yes, they came in with USC and UCLA, at least USC and UCLA knew they were coming in a year prior. So, you know, could you call them the absolute new kids on the block? Sure, if you wanted.
Their outfits would certainly kind of back that up.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I was like, they might be the newest. They are easily the scariest.
Oh, for sure.
The last one we recorded before this was UCLA, and we finished that one talking about how UCLA's intro to this conference could not be any worse. I think you'll see quickly that there ain't a team sliding more smoothly into the conference than the Ducks. Like, they are loaded for bear or duck, as it might be. Hunter.
Would you say they're going to take to the conference like a duck takes to water?
That's exactly what I would say.
Wow. And any Oregon fan listening to this is going to be like, okay, guys, take your shots now. It's not like they haven't heard this before, right?
Yeah, they're.
I guess we take them while we can before they come and curb stomp the entire league.
I mean, this is the situation. Like, if you are jumping to a new conference and that conference is very tradition rich and very stacked, like, you want to be where the Ducks are right now.
So, you know, this is an Oregon team, 12-2 last season. Dan Lanning just firing at all cylinders, had, you know, people knocking on his door, you know, trying to give him the Alabama job if he wanted it. And he's like, nah, I'm here. You know, this is a Ducks team that really was on the verge of the playoff last year very easily. You know, but for their game against Washington, you know, they're absolutely, you know, in the playoff talks. But
I mean, like, quite literally, Michael Penix is the only thing that stood between Oregon Ducks and a potential run at a national championship.
There's a very amusing argument that could be made that's like, hypothetically, of all the Big Ten coaches, who has the best odds to be Ohio State's football coach next year? Ryan Day is probably number one, but Dan Lanning is, you know, I think Ohio State fans being what they are, you know, a lot of them might grab Lanning right now if they could. There's no hotter coach in the country right now. This guy is white hot. He chose to stay, and that's why he's still at Oregon.
So, John, let's start off with a chat on the Oregon D. What do we know?
All right, so we've said this with the Pac-12 teams we've previewed so far, but, you know, looking back in time, looking at this last 10 years, etc., looking at what do we know about these teams over time. So Dan Lanning pretty clearly has something that no recent Oregon coach has had, which is a very solid trend in the right direction on the defensive side of the ball. So he was preceded by Mark Helfrich and Mario Cristobal, and both of those guys, for sure, had teams with elite defenses. But both of them also fielded teams with very weak defenses. And neither of those coaches ever fielded a team at Oregon that had an elite defense 2 years in a row. That is exactly what Lanning has done over the past 2 years. And now the question is if he can do it 3 years in a row, but you should definitely bet on that happening. So yes, Oregon lost safety and leading tackler Evan Williams, corner Kyrie Jackson, and defensive end Brandon Dorius to the NFL. Those guys all went in the fourth round of the NFL draft. But Oregon brings in arguably the best transfer class in the Big Ten, and it returns its best linebacker in all Pac-12 player Jeffrey Bassa. But the most important thing here is that Lanning and defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy really, really know what they're doing. So these are defensive guys who can scheme with the best of them, and you can see it in the way production is distributed. And kind of as we made kind of a little bit on both sides of the ball. We were talking about USC and making those Ohio State analogies when we talked about USC in that pod. There's a really easy way for you to familiarize yourself with the way the Dan Lanning defense operates at Oregon, and that's to look at the Jim Leonhard era at Wisconsin. Okay, in terms of the way production is smartly and expertly distributed across the defense. So consider this. Oregon featured the number 1 scoring defense in the Pac-12, despite having only 2 players with more than 4.5 sacks and no player with more than 5 sacks. The Ducks had only 3 players with more than 70 tackles, and they had no player with more than 82 tackles. This is just a team loaded with good athletes, with coaches that are putting everyone in positions to succeed at different times depending on situation. That is success by scheme. It's exactly what Jim Leonhard did at Wisconsin. It's why Lupoy is almost certainly going to be gone next year. It's why, frankly, Lanning might be gone next year too. This is a unbelievably well-coached unit with excellent leadership on the sideline and right in the middle of the field at linebacker. They are solid. It's a great defense, and they are going to slide right into the Big Ten and fit like a glove defensively.
I think it's interesting that you referenced a couple times the potential of Lanning leaving. What I don't know why you would leave Phil Knight's money, and especially now that you're in the Big Ten and the proverbial are you going to get left out of the playoff piece is off the table.
For sure. I disagree with no particular point there, right? I mean, it's then again, I feel like we are always questioning why did so-and-so leave such and such a sweet job.
It never makes sense.
He should. You're absolutely right. With what they have cooking at Oregon right now, especially if he can get Lupoy to stay, hell no, he shouldn't leave. It's a perfect situation. But I guess, we'll see. But the point being, at least from where I sit, they look friggin' great.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to SinsonLawGroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. So Scuzz, last year, Oregon's offense was pretty good. Bo Nix is now slinging the ball in Denver for my Broncos, but they got someone pretty good coming in to take his place, don't they?
Yes. So much like USC and Washington, the Ducks are going to turn over the quarterback position. However, unlike those two schools, the new guy, in my opinion, is most likely better than the old one. Dylan Gabriel is simply an exceptional quarterback. I actually watched him live last year here against Cincinnati. He's got incredible arm talent. He combines that with excellent field vision and mobility to not just extend but attack defenses with his legs. He's not the primary threat, of course, but he's so good. You can pressure him, and he eventually figures out a way to diffuse it. He does not make a lot of mistakes. He does not throw or force a lot of balls that result in interceptions, etc. He's really, really good. And I think he's a perfect fit for this offense. Bo Nix, after transferring from Auburn to Oregon, got really exceptionally better. I mean, would you guys believe it that Bo Nix completed 77.5% of his passes last year? He attempted 470 passes, and he completed 77% of them.
I'll say this. No one who watched that bowl game would have ever believed it, Scuzz.
Exactly. So the coaching staff here, much to your points on the defensive side, the offensive side, it's interesting. Will Stein was at UT San Antonio. Junior Adams was the Washington wide receiver coach for a little bit. I mean, these are young, up-and-coming coaches who don't have a ton of pedigree or experience, and they are kicking ass. Their offense is incredible, and now they've added, frankly, just a perfect fit. a perfect fit for their offense. Gabriel has a very high completion percent. He's a super efficient QB. He fits right into like the dual threat, multiple attack that is Oregon. They have an exceptional running game, and they're going to be able to RPO the shit out of everybody. It's frankly terrifying. On top of that, beyond quarterback, they lose next to nothing from this offense. Minus their center, the entire O-line is back. There are only 2 sophomores and 0 freshmen in the entire 2 deep. Now that could change with camp, right? They could have like some exceptional freshman that jumps up because their recruiting is so strong as well. But the point is they have a physical and imposing offensive line coming back virtually intact from last year. By comparison to USC, who gave up 30 sacks each of the last 2 years, again, in large part because Caleb Williams was a guy that held the ball a lot. Oregon gave up only 5 sacks each of the last 2 years. When have you ever heard 470 attempted passes by Bo Nix?
That's unreal.
That's insane.
31 attempted passes by Ty Thompson, the backup. A 1% allowed sack rate. That is preposterous.
I mean, this is fresh in my mind because we talked about USC, but USC gave up 6 times as many sacks.
Yeah.
Because I remember you gave us the numbers, like not even close.
And I don't think they threw the ball. Like maybe they did, but and it's not just the sacks. Last year, minus a true away game in the Texas Heat in week 2 against Texas Tech, they averaged 4 yards per carry or greater in every single game. This crew is not going to miss a beat in this conference. They have the physicality. They're not going to be intimidated or outmatched by the rugged defenses that they're going to be playing. Their skill positions, yes, they lose their top running back, but he only accounted for 50% of their rushing attempts. The number 2 guy, Jordan James, last year, 100 plus carries, 11 TDs, and a better average, 7.1 yards per carry with over 100 attempts. Those are Wisconsin under Brett Bielema numbers. The top wide receiver is gone, but they bring back every other meaningful pass catcher and 70% of the team's production in 2023. They also added a top guy from A&M. Their recruiting class is awesome. This team is absolutely loaded across the board with great coaching, senior tenured players in the right positions. They are going to be a handful for everyone that they play this year.
Have you ever thought about building a Westlaw Pirates-like community for your business? If so, we've got your solution. Teamworks Media, a brand marketing and content company, is here to help you tell your brand story better. Better yet, you can work directly with the founder, Jay Sharman, known on this podcast as Like the Posts. The same expertise he's brought to brands like ESPN, the Big Ten Conference, and Northwestern University are now available to you in an affordable way, directly with this Wildcat superfan. Contact Jay directly at 312-446-9435 or jay@teamworksmedia.com to learn how to elevate your brand story. Speaking of the teams that they're going to play this year, we kind of looked at the schedules for the California teams, and there's some differences here with the Oregon schedule. They open up at home against Idaho and Boise State. Then they travel to Oregon State. Good to see that it's not the Civil War anymore, right? It's the battle for the platypus. If that's unofficial, it should be the duck and the beaver,
right?
Then they got a bye week. They go down to UCLA. Then they're home for Michigan State and Ohio State. They're at Purdue, October 19th. Home for Illinois. At Michigan, November 2nd. Home for Maryland. At Wisconsin, November 16th. Then they have a bye week, and then they play Washington to finish off the season at Autzen. That's a tough schedule. Kinda.
Well, let's say though,
mid-October through mid-November is a pretty tough stretch, but
yeah, the back half is much tougher than the front half.
So there's the on one hand, on the other hand, right? On one hand, we were talking about it with our Pac-12 previews. Like, they get a true miserable weather game, November 16th in Madison, right? Against a team that is going to do everything they can to find an advantage out of that, right? In the Badgers. On the flip side, the ceiling for wins is all of them. There is
for sure.
No doubt this team can win. And like in my mind, like they play a potentially awesome Ohio State team, but you know what? They get that game at home, and I expect them, based on everything Scuzz said, to have the better quarterback and by far the more experienced quarterback in that game. And so that's, when you're matching up two teams that, are stacked with talent everywhere else, that look great everywhere else, that's a massive chip to have, in addition to having the game at home. There's a situation, certainly, like, where, from where I sit, the first 5 games are cake. And if they roll through that and then beat Ohio State at home, it's absolutely possible that might be the number 1 team in the country heading to Purdue. And then, that Michigan game's tough. That Ohio State game's really tough. And because of when it is and that it's their first game in this conference at this time of year, that Wisconsin game is certainly tough too. But I can't stress enough, and Scuzz would agree, this is an awesome football team. They are really good and really well coached right now. And they have good stuff everywhere on both sides of the ball. And they ain't getting fed into a wood chipper like UCLA was, schedule-wise. Like, they can handle this.
So, obviously the ceiling is all of them. What's the floor?
10.
Yeah, I think 10.
Washington loses so much and Michigan loses so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to imagine them losing to both of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
Could they lose to Ohio State, at Michigan, and at Wisconsin, or maybe pick up one of those road big games and Big Ten games and lose the Washington game? Maybe you could talk me into 3 if some things don't click right for them, but they're just so loaded on both sides of the ball.
They're awesome. And I know, like, as Big Ten fans and all of you listening, you look at a schedule that says, like, how can you look at Ohio State and Michigan and say, like, Scuzz is right, Michigan's losing a lot. But I get it. Michigan's still going to have a bunch. Ohio State has a ton right now, okay? It's about Oregon. It's about what they are. Like, and the other thing I really want to stress is, like, Scuzz mentioned just how loaded for bear they are with that quarterback, that offensive line, and everything else. You have to realize, in terms of personality and culture, Lanning's a defensive guy. That's what his history is, okay? They're producing that kind of offense. His culture's defense. Remember, Oregon's D wasn't like this historically before he got here. And he has a phenomenal defensive coach and a phenomenal install going on the defensive side of the ball. It's really easy to look at this team the way we looked at Michigan last year, where you're just like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. This is a team that's good at everything, and they're well coached.
I will say Oregon being a product of the Kirby Smart / Nick Saban coaching trees is pretty wild.
Right? Yeah,
it is.
That's where Lanning was the DC under Kirby at Georgia. But I can't get over how well coached they are with this young staff. And John, you mentioned Lupoy, I think the DC, who's probably going to go somewhere in the next couple of years. It's probably the same is true on the offensive side. And I think much like Smart and Saban have been able to do at their respective jobs, I think you're going to see Lanning be able to pull in those up and coming guys and give them that platform to shine and have an opportunity at head coaching roles themselves. I think this Oregon program is built for the long haul in that way. Unless for some reason Lanning gets stars in his eyes about going back to the SEC. But I don't understand why you would, given what he has to work with here.
So what I'm hearing you saying, Scuzz, is having young up and coming coaching is a good thing.
Turns out.
Let me file that away, and we can revisit that maybe later on this summer.
I'll humor myself just by humoring myself to believe that there's like one Oregon State fan who spite listens to this preview. We're well aware you had a good football team last year. We're well aware that this is your hated rival. It's the platypus game, the Civil War, as Sam outlined. We're all just realistic about where Oregon is right now. And to catch UCLA, and I know it's in Pasadena, I don't care. Oregon is just way better. you're getting Michigan State at home. That's like like hide your kids from that game.
I mean, ironically, Michigan State is basically like Beavertown East, like, but Oregon smashed Oregon State last year, 31-7. So I don't see the Spartans with all of their incoming Oregon State brethren jumping up here. But
this isn't quite Michigan's schedule from last year, but it feels like Oregon barely has to roll out of bed up until when Ohio State comes to Eugene.
Yes,
that's when their season starts.
Agreed.
So, anything else to mention about the Ducks? Do we want to go on record? Do we want to go on record and call them for a national championship like we did Michigan last year?
I don't know. I mean, they're again like Ohio State is going to be a very like that game is an unbelievable game. Like what a Big Ten game! That's your
game day's already there, right?
That's your first absolute marquee game of the new Big Ten. Like
I guess
miss lead pipe lock, right? Like
game day and Fox Noon.
Yep.
Like every pregame show is going to be at that game.
Ooh, competing pregame shows. I love it.
Loser of that game can absolutely still get into the playoff. It's going to be a monster game. I mean, I'm just glad we're not playing Oregon. Thanks. Good. Nice to miss them. Who knows if this will be, again, as you guys said, they have everything they need to set up a dynasty that lasts here. I have no idea with the way the coaching carousel works if that's going to last, but for this season, I'm glad we have nothing to do with this football team.
Hey, good news for Cat fans. Our game at Maryland is on Friday night, right?
So you could watch.
Yeah, so that's October 11th. So your October 12th will be free to take in this Ducks Buckeyes extravaganza if you are so inclined.
Yes, because the family is definitely going to be happy with giving up the TV after you've been to watching it the night before.
One other thing I want to add. Look, all due respect to Willie, nothing but love for Willie, but as far as my daughter is going to be concerned, every other mascot in this conference is playing for second place now. Like, what can I say? The Oregon Duck is that's as good as you can do a mascot.
All right, well, let's go ahead and leave it there for tonight with the Ducks. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Westlaw Pirates, and email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the West Lot O'Brien Field flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. John LeCombe and Eric Scalzboy, Sam Walter, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.